Welcome to Daily Brief YouTube channel. On the fifth day of Russia's entry into Ukraine, it met resistance in most parts of the country, where a wide variety of military equipment, from helicopters to warplanes to armored vehicles, was destroyed. Ukraine was forced to enter the biggest war since the Second World War, when Hitler's Germany ravaged Europe. Despite this, the Ukrainian armed forces is showing a very strong resistance against the intense attacks of the Russian army. As a result of this resistance, Russia suffered great losses in the region. The fact that Russia did not get any results despite the 195,000 soldiers and thousands of military equipment and war machines that Russia took to the Ukrainian border before the invasion of Ukraine reveals that the Ukrainian resistance is based on a very good strategy. When the Russian invasion started, the capital Kiev was expected to fall within 2 days, but on the fifth day of the war, the Ukrainian armed forces and the people of the region are still defending the capital and repelling the Russian army. Putin certainly did not expect the Russian army to suffer such huge losses against Ukraine. Despite these massive losses, Russia's insistence on quickly seizing the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, disarming the Ukrainian army and overthrowing the Ukrainian government persists, under Putin's leadership. Russia is advancing in 3 directions to the capital of Ukraine. The Russian army, which goes directly to Kiev with its army through Belarus on the northern border of Ukraine, continues to advance from the Donbass region in the east of the country. But at the moment, we can consider the Kherson region in the south of the country as the most critical place. Because as a result of the Russian army crossing the Crimea, it encountered a very harsh Ukrainian resistance in the Kherson region and its advance was stopped. The Ukrainian armed forces blew up a bridge in the city of Kherson to stop the Russian warships. At the same time, one of the most spectacular developments of the day was the destruction of the Russian military convoy and air defense systems in Kherson. One of the main actors of this success was Bayraktar TB2 armed drones supplied from Turkey. Before mentioning the success of this popular drone in Ukraine, which is famous for destroying Russian tanks and defense systems, it should be noted that the primary architect of the Ukrainian resistance is the heroic and patriotic Ukrainian people. They have some powerful equipment to resist, but the Ukrainians show such heroism that they are ready to confront the Russian army with stones and sticks even if they have no weapons in their hands. The Ukrainian armed forces neutralized the Russian military convoy that entered the city of Kherson with Bayraktar TB2 armed unmanned aerial vehicles. In the images reflected on social media, many armored vehicles in the Russian military convoy stand out. In addition, it was reported that the logistics elements of the Russian army were destroyed by Bayraktar TB2 armed drones along the railway. In the statement made by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, it was announced that the teams using Bayraktar TB2 armed drones destroyed a freight train carrying fuel and oil. In another shared image, Bayraktar TB2 armed drones destroyed Russia's favorite air defense system, the S-300 air defense system. According to local claims, the Russian military convoy advancing south of Gostomel airport in Ukraine was shot down by Bayraktar TB2 armed drones. Local accounts shared the image of the destruction of a convoy of Russian military vehicles on the way to Kharkiv. The Bayraktar TB2, procured from Turkey, may be the most strategic weapon of the Ukrainian army, despite the large arms aid from the European Union and the USA and many high-level weapons used in the region. Because Bayraktar TB2 unmanned aerial vehicles had proven himself in the wars in Libya and Nagorno-Karabakh. However, it has now been seen that Bayraktar TB2 can also be successful against the Russian army, which has high-level radar and air defense systems. It is seen once again that the drones, which are mentioned as the technology of the future, are a much bigger threat when armed as well as tracking and reporting the activity in the region. The showdown with Bayraktar TB2s in Kherson and Kharkiv suddenly brought the interest in armed drones to a peak. In an article published in Poland today, Bayraktar TB2s were announced as the most critical weapon currently used in Ukraine, while emphasizing how the Russian army was defenseless against Bayraktar TB2s. It is also reported that Poland made a request to receive the 24 Bayraktar TB2 armed drones purchased from Turkey earlier. Kiev took delivery of 20 planes, but analysts expected the plane to be neutralized as Russia targeted Ukrainian airbases in the early stages of the war. So what else can this interesting drone, which was used in the war against enemies with weak air defense systems, now do against a much more capable army? Before the conflict, Most people would have said that the Russians would destroy the launch sites and command points for the Ukrainian TB2 crews, and so they don't seem to have chosen to do that until now, said Dr. Richard Connolly, director of the Center for Russian, European and Eurasian Studies at the University of Birmingham. By the way, this allowed Ukraine to do harm by using the plane. So what other comments did experts make about the strength of Bayraktar TB2 armed drones in the Ukrainian army against the Russian army before the start of the conflict? We learned from Nagorno-Karabakh that drones can play an important role in anti-armor warfare when countries have the capacity to use armed drones on the battlefield, and air defense is less of a concern, said Professor Michael Horowitz at the University of Pennsylvania. But while the drone has proven useful in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in Syria in 2020, it now faces a much more capable foe. The principles of responsible artificial intelligence will establish a justifiable trust in AI systems that the Department of Defense will rely on for all field operations. Mark Cancian, senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, wrote in a recent article for Breaking Defense that a conflict between Russia and Ukraine will give insight into the usefulness of the modern tank, an aspect of the terrain, on the battlefield. The war questioned by some experts after the Nagorno-Karabakh War. Reuters reported that Russia has an estimated 2,840 main battle tanks, citing research from the London-based think tank International Institute for Strategic Studies. It's different because you have two rivals with more developed armies than you have in Nagorno-Karabakh, Cancian said in an interview. The Russians, of course, have an almost first-rate army. Sam Bendet, a Russian military expert who advises the CNA think tank, said, "The Russian military claimed that the Bayraktars would not be a major threat to a power like Russia because of Russia's advanced early warning radars, electronic warfare capabilities and layered air defense. Russia is encountering more resistance than it expected from Ukrainian forces, but Russian President Vladimir Putin still has unused combat power at his disposal." He noted that the successes of TB2 drones in Syria and Nagorno-Karabakh went against old Soviet-made air defense systems because it flew low and wasn't built for speed, making it more vulnerable to advanced air defense systems. The United States and its allies also provided the Ukrainian forces with the Javelin to defend against Russian tanks. So they can see the flaggers from afar, identify them more quickly, and take various countermeasures against him, said Bendet. Despite all these comments, for now, Bayraktar TB2 armed drones seem to have achieved much greater success in the Ukraine war than experts expected. The stronger uprising of the Ukrainian resistance against the heavy attacks of Russia also increased the aid to Ukraine. Many European Union member states and the United States have announced that they will send very strong military aid to Ukraine. These aids are as follows. More aid to Ukraine has been approved by the government, while the Czech Republic has sent 188 million kroner machine guns, sniper rifles, pistols and ammunition. Belgium will send 2,000 machine training, 3,800 tons of oil supply and 300 soldiers to the training week to the military war in Ukraine. In Germany, the Netherlands shipment was to be made via the previously blocked 400 RPG transportation route. The Netherlands has also announced that its Ukrainian forces will send 200 Stinger guns to fight the Russian army's war industry. The USA, on the other hand, will present a large number of Stinger and Javelin tank destroyers to Ukraine as a part of its new $350 million weapon, which will be held today. Instead of sending a soldier to war all year in the European Union, it would unleash your war in this war. While this is a very serious development, the European Union plans to ship a defense arms shipment worth €450 million. At the same time, to dispatch European Union aircraft. Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Valery Zaluzhny announced that hundreds of Russian military vehicles and tanks were destroyed. With Russia for the purpose of such claims and as a target for air defense, it is difficult to predict the future of the military. For Ukraine to better such a feat, Russian casualties are likely to be its next-generation light weapon, NLAW. The system was first supplied to Kiev by the UK Ministry of Defence on 17 January 2021. Unconfirmed reports are believed that Ukrainian weapons were protected by the destruction of 3 Russian tanks in the site of Peshevik. According to Shepherd Defense Insight, the fire and forget gun can hit heavily guarded vehicles from 20 to 800 meters away.